On tonight's Wales at 6, his brother-in-law was released by Hamas after a 16-month ordeal. Now Steve Brisley speaks as the remaining hostages are released.
Just to remember that there are human beings at the centre of this. It's always been about family and loved ones for me.
Also on the programme, 30 years after Diane Jones and her daughters were murdered, police are launching a hunt for new evidence. Plus, the mum facing incurable cancer, now making sure no one in her circumstances feels alone.
And I'll have all the latest as Wales get ready to take on Belgium in tonight's crucial World Cup qualifier.
Noswaith dda. The last living hostages held by Hamas in Gaza have been released today. It forms part of a wider deal with Israel, which will also see 250 Palestinian prisoners and more than 1,700 detainees returned to their families. Today's developments have significance here in Wales too, none more so than to Steve Brisley from Porthcawl. His sister was killed in the initial October 7th attack, and his brother-in-law was taken hostage before being released in February this year. Our reporter Hamish Ausgry has been to meet him.
These are moments many thought may never come. The last of the Israelis kept in captivity for over 2 years, now finally released. Yes. The political events of the last few days, a long-awaited ceasefire, likely to be remembered for a generation. But for people like Steve Brisley, back in Wales, today brings mixed emotions.
I mean, Ellie's very much sort of says, you know, he's grateful for the 28 years he had with Leanne.
Steve's sister Leanne was killed in the October 7th attacks 2 years ago, along with his 2 nieces. Their father, Ellie Sharabi, was allowed to believe they were still alive until moments after his release earlier this year.
I've set aside my grief to varying degrees over the last 2 years because I had to be laser focused about getting Ellie home, getting Yossi back and all the remaining hostages. Obviously that's meant I haven't entirely properly engaged with my grief about my sister and my nieces, and that's something that I'll have to deal with over the coming weeks and months. But it's something that we're going to have to deal with the rest of our life.
Grief dominates life for the majority of Gazans too. According to one UN committee, the destruction of homes and the killing of civilians there amounts to a genocide, something Israel denies. Watching on from Cardiff, Madeleine McGovern, a former aid worker in Palestine, remains doubtful about the stability of peace.
We've been here before with ceasefires, and I don't have much hope as things stand that life is going to get significantly better for people in Gaza. And when we see footage of celebration, we need to remember that there are those who will never be able to celebrate again.
A so-called peace summit with world leaders taking place in Egypt today aims to usher in a new era of regional stability in the Middle East. The futures of millions in Palestine and Israel, as well as relatives here in Wales, may depend on whether they succeed.
And Hamish is here now in the studio. Hamish, there'll be several Welsh communities looking on with interest at what's taking place in the Middle East.
Well, Kate, you only have to think about all those protests we've seen right up and down the country over the last 2 years, with people demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. That day has finally come. And, you know, I spoke to a family today who live in South Wales. They have many relatives who continue to live in Gaza. They told me that they are over the moon at the ceasefire. It gives them some hope after 2 years of waiting by the phone, expecting the worst possible news about one of their family members. However, they said the situation for their relatives is still quite sensitive. There is a sense of anarchy in some communities. Many people are still hungry. Like so many, their family home in Palestine is still in ruins. So while the hostages have finally been returned to Israel, the rockets have finally stopped falling on Gaza, there are many families, not just in the Middle East, but here in Wales too, looking anxiously at what comes next.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing us that update, Hamish. Next tonight, a new £500 million fund will create jobs and grow productivity. That was Aline Morgan's cry today as she set out plans to use the scheme to replace previous EU funding. The local growth fund is over 3 years and was announced at the UK government spending review earlier this year. Our correspondent Richard Morgan's outside the Welsh Government's HQ in Cardiff tonight. Richard, how significant is this announcement?
Well, very significant if you listen to the Welsh Government, Kate. The first thing to say, though, is that this isn't new money. In fact, the £547 million is slightly less than that allocated to Wales by the previous scheme, by the Tories. So that was called the Shared Prosperity Fund. The difference this time is that politicians here say it'll be them deciding how that money is spent, not people at the other end of the M4 in Westminster. Now, exactly how that's going to happen and what the money will be spent on is to be confirmed. The Welsh Government have talked about schemes to get people back into work, investment in research and innovation, things like AI and low-carbon energy, and new infrastructure. So that gives some idea as to their thinking. But of course, this comes against the backdrop of low economic growth across the UK. And I put it to the First Minister earlier that bucking that trend here in Wales will be a challenge.
Well, we are already doing better. If you look at inward investment, we've got 30% more people who are being employed in the past year as a result of inward investment. That's a much better record than they've got in England. So we can do this. We'll be having an investment summit in December. So we're very, very focused on growing the economy.
And Richard, what have the government's opponents said today?
Well, predictably, Kate, they've been rather underwhelmed. Plaid Cymru said this isn't enough to tackle decades of underinvestment and deep-rooted deprivation. The Welsh Conservatives say Wales is getting tens of millions of pounds less than under the previous scheme, and Reform blame Welsh Labour for the state of the economy here. Now, this all comes on the eve of the publication of the draft budget for next year, and we should find out a little bit more about Welsh Government spending plans then. Kate.
Richard, thanks very much indeed. Next tonight, the family of a mother who was murdered alongside her two young daughters 30 years ago say they will always fight for justice. Diane Jones and her daughters Shauna and Sarah Jane were killed in an arson attack on their home in the Gurnos area of Merthyr Tydfil in October 1995. 3 women were sent to prison over the attacks, but their convictions were later quashed by the Court of Appeal. But South Wales Police is now reinvestigating the case, as our correspondent Hannah Thomas reports.
Should have been off of bed, didn't you?
They were aunts that never got to see their nieces growing up.
I like that one too. Yeah, it's lovely of it.
Denise and Mary Jones lost their sister Diane and her daughters Shauna and Sarah Jane on the 10th of October 1995. They burned to death in a house fire which had been started deliberately.
My memories was getting a knock on the door early hours that morning, and I opened my bedroom window, and that's the scene I seen. My sister's house had been on fire and there was firemen in her bedroom. And I got to live and see that every night. When I have nightmares and it's there, the image will never go away. It's cruel how they took my sister and her 2 babies for no reason at all.
This was the scene after the fire. This weekend, Mary spoke about this for the first time to ITV Wales in her first television interview because she wants justice for her sister.
She needs to rest with her babies now. 30 years on. My mum, my dad didn't get to see justice. So hopefully, I do. We were very, very close family. We just ripped our hearts to pieces. We were never the same family again.
After those dark days in 1995, the house was eventually demolished and pulled down. But what happened here is far from forgotten. Well, this past weekend has been all about remembering the lives of Diane Jones and her daughters Shauna and Sarah Jane. This memorial stone actually stands where the house was in 1995. Over the past few days, there have been fresh flowers laid in tribute to the 3 young lives that were lost. The police were involved from the start, but now they've reopened the case in the hope that modern-day forensics may help them solve the murders.
We're in close contact with our forensic providers and holding meetings with them to discuss exactly what opportunities are there. When you think about DNA, the National DNA Database came into practice 30 years ago this year. There are people out there who may hold answers to exactly what happened. Those people would have had this on their conscience for 30 years. Allegiances have changed. Those people have grown up. Perhaps they've got children and grandchildren of their own.
Diane Jones's family are appealing for those people to come forward and finally catch the killer. Hannah Thomas, ITV News in Merthyr Tydfil.
To come, Ruth, as you wear the forecast for the week ahead?
I do indeed. In a nutshell, the weather you have now is exactly the weather you'll have for the week ahead. All very dull, but perhaps something more exciting by the end of next weekend when it turns wet and windy again. I'll see you soon.
And the players have just arrived on the bus behind me for a huge game tonight at the Cardiff City Stadium, where Craig Bellamy has called for the perfect storm. I'll have all the latest shortly.
But before that, the new Dean of Bangor Cathedral says she is going to make the changes that are needed. The Reverend Dr Manon Cyridwen James takes up the role after her predecessor, Andy John, stepped down following safeguarding and governance concerns. She's been speaking to our correspondent, Carol Green, who's at the cathedral for us this evening. And Carol, how much of a task is ahead for the new Dean?
It's a huge task, Kate, given the seriousness of the allegations and the findings of the investigation which followed. The report said there was a culture of binge drinking here, unprofessional language and sexual boundaries were blurred. Whistleblowers had described it as an unsafe place. Now, that's a damning indictment of any organisation, but particularly a cathedral, a place of faith and reflection. The new Dean has acknowledged those failings, the toxic culture and the failure in governance.
I'm hugely sad. I think it's very hard because when you've grown up in the church and when you've served the church for decades, and then you look around and you see, what we've seen in the last couple of months, really, and year, it is heartbreaking.
The new Dean says work has already begun to address some of those problem areas. The report made 31 recommendations and a task force has been set up here to implement improvements. She said many of the personnel have already left and most of the congregation were unaware of the troubles behind the scenes. Now it's all about rebuilding that trust.
It's been a very slow process, but careful process of putting together policies and procedures. But it's not just about that, it's about culture change, and culture change takes time. It's about building up trust, building up relationships, and making sure that everybody is in a right relationship with each other.
But rebuilding those relationships is not just within these four walls. It's about recognising the leadership position of the cathedral within the community. And of course, this scandal has played out against a wider crisis facing the church in Wales, historic allegations of safeguarding failures. But the new Dean here says this must be a new beginning, and it's already started.
Carol in Bangor, thank you very much. Now, being diagnosed with cancer is hard enough, but being told it is spread to a secondary area is news nobody wants to hear. But that's exactly what happened to Danielle Robinson from Rhyl. She was diagnosed with breast cancer before her oncologist told her it had spread to her liver. She's now taken part in a series of portraits to demonstrate the realities of living with the disease. And Ian Lang went along to meet her.
Danielle Robinson was just 35 when she was told that because of secondary cancer she probably wouldn't reach her 40th birthday. Breast cancer had spread to her liver and was incurable. It was earth-shattering news. She had to give up her job to undergo treatment and try to deal with what life had dealt her. And then there was the sense of isolation, the feeling that she needed to connect with others going through the same trauma. It resolved into a mission a determination to ensure that no one facing similar circumstances should have to feel alone.
To be sat in an oncology appointment at the age of 35 2 years ago, I have a 5-year-old son, to say, Danielle, you're not going to see your 40th birthday. I never want anyone to ever feel like that.
Cheers, ladies. Thank you for coming today. Happy first birthday to us.
After linking up with the Make Seconds Count charity, which provides wraparound help and support for women and men with secondary breast cancer, she set up a support group in Rhyl, which celebrated its first birthday last week. Held at Rhyl Create in the White Rose Centre, it's a close friendship group that chooses to celebrate life.
I've been this morning for scan results and, knowing that I've had group to look forward to afterwards for the support of these ladies, my family, I've left them a little bit upset at home, but I've come to group because these light me up and they're definitely amazing.
I'd say there's a rawness, but in a good way, where we can talk all about the very basics in life. We can share things that maybe we don't all share with our loved ones because we protect them. We can be happy, be sad, and be silly.
And because she's so set on making sure more people become aware of secondary breast cancer, she agreed with 15 other women to literally bare her soul as part of a Make Seconds Count campaign in Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It aims to demonstrate the visible and invisible sides to living with secondary breast cancer.
A bit nervous at first, but then I decided, no, I need to do this, and I need to show people that I wear a mask and people wear a mask, but there are sides to us that people don't see. And that's side effects of treatment, living with this every day, struggling with the mental aspect of going through treatment and knowing that our lifespan is cut shorter.
Here, the deep bonds of friendship and mutual care, born out of courage and common experience, are beyond value. Ian Lang, ITV News, Rhyl.
And if you're looking for more help or advice on the issues raised in that story, please visit our website, itv.com/helplines. Now, time for the latest sports news.
Powering local sport in the community. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV Cymru Wales Sports Report.
Football, and in just under an hour's time, Wales will kick off a defining match in their quest to reach next year's World Cup finals in North America. Win, and they're in the box seat, but if they lose or draw, then they're likely to end up in the playoffs. At the Cardiff City Stadium for us this evening is our sports reporter, Matt Southcombe. Matt, is it fair to say this is Craig Bellamy's biggest challenge as Wales manager so far?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment, Kate. When Craig Bellamy took over as Wales manager, qualification for the World Cup was their bold, underlined objective number one. And a win tonight would be a huge stride towards achieving that aim. It would also be his first real major scalp as Wales manager. Now, last week, of course, Wales lost 3-0 to England and the mood was a little bit glum around Welsh football. But then on Friday night, Belgium drew 0-0 with North Macedonia, a huge result that blew this group wide open and the perfect tonic that Welsh football needed heading into tonight's fixture as well. And now they know that their fate is in their own hands. If they win their 3 remaining games, they will qualify for the Football World Cup. And it's just starting to feel like it just might be one of those special nights here at the Cardiff City Stadium. Think back to Belgium in the qualifying campaign for Euro 2016, the game against Ukraine ahead of the World Cup, and Craig Bellamy is certainly hoping for another raucous atmosphere here this evening.
The connection the players and the fans have, it's quite unique, and it's really special. I think the players, and even myself, are always taken back by it. The level of respect and the amount that travel to even the home games. And I expect Monday night to be electric. So hopefully it's the perfect storm.
So spirits have been lifted by that result on Friday night, but Wales know tonight is going to be far from straightforward. Belgium do still possess an awful lot of quality. Players like Kevin De Bruyne. When Wales played in the reverse fixture against Belgium, it was 4-3. So that gives you an idea of what tonight could have in store.
And Matt, of course, we'll bring the latest update on that score in the late bulletin tonight. Thanks very much. Now, this weekend, the Llais Music Festival has drawn to a close at the Wales Millennium Centre. Celebrating the voice in all its forms, it's seen a week of music and performances from artists both from Wales and beyond. Last night, it hosted a special concert from the US-Canadian singer-songwriter Rufus Wainwright. He's told our reporter Mike Griffiths about his extraordinary career and his love for Wales.
Someone sneaking. I'm a three-headed monster. On one hand, I'm a songwriter, which is, what my dad still does it. My mom passed away, she did it, and my sister Martha, of course, does it. So it's sort of the family business. So that's one head. The other one is a singer, which loves to sing, Judy Garland, folk music, even classical at times. The voice has its own kind of hunger that has to be satisfied. And then the other monster is the composer.
People sometimes struggle to write when they're on the road and you're in the middle of a very busy Sweden yesterday, LA tomorrow, Wales
LA
tonight.
Tomorrow, yeah. No, I write all the time. I've never had a problem with coming up with crazy ideas. I have a piano backstage or keyboard, and I just write songs all the time, for better or for worse.
We're here at the Wales Millennium Centre now, which is a wonderful concert hall and one of the best in the country. How does it compare then when you're playing somewhere like this to perhaps a different size venue?
This is the nicest sort of, I should say, size in terms of everybody involved. It feels grand enough to be, important and all that, but then there's, it's not over the top, and there's still a certain amount of intimacy, with the audience. So it's a good payoff for everybody. I love playing stadiums too, and then whenever that happens, and I also love playing, bars. So this is kind of a nice combination of all of those in a strange way.
Being here in Wales, and you've had some happy times here before, and what do you take away from this, albeit with a flying visit when you're here?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I just came from Sweden, where they did my opera Prima Donna at the Opera House there, the Royal Opera House, but I remember very joyfully mixing the album of that record here. And I had a very famous choir teacher named Ewan Edwards, who was very Welsh. And so whenever I'm here, I kind of think of him too. He passed away not too long ago. So yeah, I love Wales.
Oh, great to hear that. I'm sure it was in a marvellous concert last night. And you can watch all that interview in full on ITV-X. Now, it's weather time and Ruth joins me. Ruth, what's in store for this week?
Well, I think the best way of putting it is the weather that you've had, I know I said this earlier, is pretty much the weather that is in store for the rest of this week. High pressure is firmly in charge. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means that things remain largely settled, but cloudy. I don't know about you, but this morning the cloud was quite low and gloomy. We had a few spots of patchy rain and drizzle, likely to continue over the next few days as well. As a general rule, the further west that you go, this is where you'll see the best of the blue skies and sunshine. Temperatures this week remaining largely around average, slightly above average by night, which does mean the next couple of nights should be frost-free. And I can show you all of this on the bigger picture. High pressure, as I said, is effectively bouncing around the north of the UK, and that effectively means then that northern and western areas will see the best of that blue sky and sunshine. It's what we call a blocking high. It's keeping all these nasty bits and pieces of wet weather out in the Atlantic. So as I said, the weather you have is the weather you will keep on having, and there are no signs of things changing, possibly until we get to the second part of the weekend. So from Sunday onwards, this area of low pressure is going to start to make its presence felt. That means wet and windy conditions and effectively back to business as usual. But in the meantime, it's all looking very calm.
Outbreaks of ancient sites will gradually settle into an evening of pizza plates al fresco. TUI sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.
Well, the cloud that has plagued eastern areas still remains out there as we head into the overnight stretch. For the rest of Wales, though, we will see clear skies developing, and thanks to that gentle breeze, the return of some pockets of mist and fog through the hills and valleys, the usual prone spots. It should be a frost-free night with general lows just about in the double figures, although more sheltered rural spots could dip to around 4 or 5 degrees, but still not perhaps cold enough for a frost. But it does mean it's certainly going to be a very slow start to tomorrow morning. The sunshine losing strength now, so that low cloud mist and murk could well take quite a while to shift, but it will do. And actually, as we head through the course of the day, we'll see some breaks in the cloud, the best of which yet again out towards the west. But even here into the afternoon, the cloud will build. So as a result of all of this, the slow start, the grey, gloomy conditions, the temperatures will feel a little bit fresher than they have done out there today. Not wildly away from average, but we're looking at around 15 or 16 at best. So again, cold under any clear skies through Tuesday night and into Wednesday. And as far as Wednesday is concerned, well, I'm pretty sure you've got the setup now. More of the same. Cloud developing, any breaks likely to be out towards western areas. But I think much of Wales will see some brighter skies from time to time. But downward trend in temperature continues, so by the time we get to the middle of the week, we're looking at just 13 or 14 for many areas at best, some struggling to get much above 10 or 11 degrees, which is slightly below the average for the time of year. And as I've been saying, there really isn't any sign of any change coming anytime soon. Very same old until we get really into the second part of the weekend, where it's likely to turn wet and windy.
TUI sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.
It's not very often I get to say that the weather is all dull and not very exciting, but actually I quite like it.
Do you know?
Could be worse.
I'd like a bit of sunshine, please, Ruth. Well, that's all we have time for now. I'll be back with a late update after the news at 10. I hope you can join me then. But for now, enjoy your evening.